You try to protect your family, but the more you try, the smaller and more powerless you feel. If right now you are living in days like that, please stay with me until the end of this video. Because behind the story of a baby lying in a small basket among the reeds of the Nile River is something incredibly important. Now let's go back to ancient Egypt where the story begins. After Joseph died, many generations passed. The people of Israel, who once were just a small family, had now become a great nation living in Egypt. On the fields along the Nile, their voices and laughter echoed every morning. Israelite children ran and played between rows of golden wheat. But that very growth made the new pharaohs begin to feel afraid. One day, in a palace covered in gold and luxury, Pharaoh sat on his throne while his officials bowed and gave their reports. They told him that the Israelites were multiplying too quickly. If war broke out, they might join the enemy. On Pharaoh's face, the wrinkles of worry slowly hardened into cold suspicion. He slammed his hand on the armrest of his throne and commanded, "We must make them slaves. We must crush them so they no longer have the strength to stand up." From that day on, the Israelites were driven to work on construction sites. They built store cities. They dragged stones. They mixed mud and made bricks. Under the burning desert sun, their backs were soaked with sweat. Their hands bled. Their groans were swallowed up by the hiss of whips cutting through the air. At night, they collapsed on the hard ground, every part of their body in pain. But the next morning, they still had to get up and carry loads as heavy as their own despair. The strange thing was this: the more they were oppressed, the more the Israelites multiplied. Children kept being born. Newborn cries still rose from their small tents. Every time a baby cried, Israelite mothers both smiled and trembled. That cry was their hope, but it was also a terrible danger. The news reached Pharaoh, and his anger exploded. He no longer only wanted to enslave the Israelites, he wanted to cut off their future. A terrifying decree was issued. Every Hebrew baby boy that is born must be thrown into the Nile. Only the baby girls may live. When that order was announced, the whole Hebrew quarter was filled with cries and mourning. Pregnant women held their bellies tightly, their hands shaking with fear. Fathers looked down at their rough, calloused hands and felt completely helpless. They could carry stones and pull carts, but they could not fight the command of the king. In that suffocating atmosphere, there was a couple from the tribe of Levi who quietly prayed every night. They knew they were about to have a child. Every time the mother felt the baby stir inside her, she was both joyful and terrified. If it's a girl, she can live, but if it's a boy, no one dared say the rest out loud. But that question hung in the air of their small tent like a heavy shadow. The day of birth came. In the dim light of an oil lamp, between groans of pain and whispered prayers, a cry finally rang out, clear but fragile. The midwife lifted the baby and looked at his small red face and tiny hands waving in the air. She whispered, "It's a boy." The mother's heart tightened. She held the baby close to her chest and quickly glanced toward the door, afraid that even one loud sound might reach the ears of the Egyptian soldiers. For the first 3 months, the whole family lived in constant tension. Whenever the baby cried, the mother pressed him against her chest and put her finger to her lips, signaling everyone to be silent. They patted the walls with cloth so the sound of his cry wouldn't escape. But the child grew quickly. His cries became louder. His first babbling sounds felt like knives cutting into his parents' fear. One night, when everyone was asleep, the mother sat alone beside the small cradle. Her eyes were dark with exhaustion. She looked at her sleeping son. His tiny hand was gently curled, as if he were holding on to something he trusted. Tears filled her eyes. She knew she could not hide him forever. Sooner or later, the heavy footsteps of Egyptian soldiers would stop at their door. In her desperation, she had only one thing left she could do. She could surrender him into God's hands. The next day, she went to the riverbank to cut papyrus reeds. She brought them home and carefully wove them into a small basket. She and her husband coated it with tar and pitch so it would not leak every weave of the basket, every layer of pitch. Carried a silent prayer. Lord, please be the wall that protects our child. When the basket was finished, the mother lined it with a soft cloth. Then she gently placed her baby inside. The child opened his eyes and looked at his mother with dark, clear eyes. She bent down and kissed his forehead. The sweet smell of his baby skin made her heart ache. Next to her, the baby's older sister Miriam stood silently. Her small hands were clasped together. She did not dare cry. At dawn, they quietly walked to the bank of the Nile. The surface of the water was calm and pale, reflecting the soft morning sky. Birds called to each other on the distant trees with a strangely sad sound. The mother bent down and carefully set the basket on the water. She pushed it into the reeds so the current wouldn't carry it away too fast. The basket rocked gently, then slowly floated along. The baby stirred. His tiny hands lifted into the air as if trying to hold on to something invisible. The mother stood there, her feet rooted to the ground. She wanted to rush in, grab the basket, and bring her son back, but she knew that doing so would only lead him to death. Tears streamed down her face. She whispered, "My child, if I cannot keep you with me, then please, God, keep you in His hands." Then she turned away. Every step she took felt like her heart was being torn apart. Miriam could not bear to leave her little brother. She quietly followed along the riverbank, hiding behind the reeds to see what would happen. The small basket drifted on the water, sometimes disappearing behind thick papyrus, then appearing again. At times it seemed stuck and ready to sink, but then a gentle ripple would push it back up. It was as if an invisible hand were guiding its path. Not long after, the princess of Egypt came to the river with her attendants. They had come to bathe. Their voices and laughter echoed across the water. Miriam shrank back into the bushes, her heart pounding. The princess, dressed in fine silk, walked to the water's edge. Her eyes stopped on a strange object caught in the reeds. "What is that?" she asked. "Bring it to me." One of her maidservants swam out and pulled the basket to shore. When the lid was opened, the baby's cry rang out, sharp and heartbreaking. He stretched his hands toward the light, his face flushed red. The princess looked down, and her heart softened. She knew at once that this was a Hebrew baby boy, one of the children who should have been thrown into the river by the order of her own father, but instead of turning away, she was filled with compassion. "Poor child," she whispered, gently touching his soft baby hair. "I cannot abandon you." That decision could set her against the king himself, but in that moment, the voice of conscience was stronger than the voice of fear. Right then, Miriam gathered all her courage and stepped out from her hiding place. She was trembling, but she bowed respectfully and said, "Your Highness, if you wish, I can find a Hebrew woman to nurse this baby for you." The princess looked at the little girl, surprised. Then she smiled. "That's a good idea," she replied. "Go and find one for me." Miriam ran home as fast as she could. Her breathing was heavy, but hope was blazing in her heart. She grabbed her mother's hand and almost cried out,
"Mother, hurry! Someone needs you to nurse a Hebrew baby."
When the mother arrived and saw her little son lying safely in the princess's arms, her legs almost gave way. In that moment, grief, fear, and overflowing joy crashed over her like a giant wave. The princess said to her, "Take this child and nurse him for me. When he is older, bring him back to me. I will pay you for your work." The mother bowed and answered, "Yes, Your Highness." But in her heart, she knew this. No amount of money or reward could compare to this gift. She was being allowed to raise her own son under the protection of the royal house. From that day on, the child grew up in his mother's arms. He heard stories about the God of his ancestors. At the same time, he was being prepared for life in the world of the palace. From that moment, his life turned a page. And the rest of his story we will continue to discover together. If the story of this baby in a little basket among the reeds has touched your heart, please support this channel by hitting subscribe, pressing like, and leaving a comment with your thoughts below. Every share from you will help more people hear about God's quiet love and protection in the moments that feel most hopeless. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end of this story.